Introduction, and Tom, thank you so much for all of your work and the work of the commission. So you're actually inspired by me, Secretary Riley? I don't think so. I was in awe. Secretary Riley, in his time in the administration, as secretary and before our committee, probably more than any other single individual, caused me to think about education. And look where it led me. But really to think about what the real potential of all the children who enter the educational system of this country, what it really is, and what it could be, and what our responsibility is. He always had that just absolute commitment to each and every child, and that was our responsibility. And it was exciting to listen to him tell us about that responsibility. It's not one that we've always held in good stead, or we've always met our obligations to, but it exists in this country, and it's important to the future of this country. So thank you, Secretary Riley, for all of that inspiration and all of that challenge to us to think about our system of education. There could be no group better titled than the commission and the work and that so many of you have participated in thinking about teaching and America's future. That's where we are, and we haven't yet quite made the adjustment. You know, I always thought when Bill Clinton was giving a speech about crossing the bridge to the 21st century, what that would mean, who would go and who wouldn't get to go, and he talked about that in some terms. And one of the things we haven't done is we really haven't brought our school system into the 21st century. And it's a lot of things, but it's also a mindset. It's about looking around and recognizing that this is where we are. We're in this century, and we have a system that is not terribly well matched in many instances for that challenge. But it's a challenge that we must meet, because this system, the American education system, has a very serious obligation and responsibility. And that is to try and prepare, and hopefully successfully prepare, young people so that they'll be able to participate in this economic system, so they'll be able to enjoy the fruits of this society, they'll be able to support themselves and their families, and participate in a manner in which they choose. That's one order. The other order is to make sure that they will be full participants in the very difficult task of maintaining our democracy in a very complex and diverse society. That's a huge challenge in a world that's moving very rapidly and a society that's being challenged in so many ways. So that's the obligation, get on with it. But that's what has to be done. I was reminded of this some years ago. I was trying to figure out ways about teaching math and certainly beginning math, and I went over to the Department of Defense, to the DARPA agency, the Advanced Research Program, the guys who get paid to fail, but every now and then they come up with wonderful, magnificent ideas, and asked them about this and about teaching 3rd and 4th grade math, and they thought they might be able to be helpful. And then I asked them, well, what about 9th grade, 11th grade math? And they said, no, I'm not so sure we're good at that. And I said, well, you're talking about developing this 24/7 worldwide proficiency system for the military, whether you're a logistics person, a fighter pilot, a platoon commander, a special forces person, you'll be able to be proficient anywhere in the world at any time, day or night. He says, yeah, that's right. He says, I'm trying to train a fighter pilot, I'm trying to train a warehouseman, I'm trying to train a logistics person, I'm trying to train a combat soldier. He says, you, however, you've got to train a citizen. And he says, that's a different role than mine. And that's the dual role, and it's never been more important than it is now in the 21st century. So what does this person look like? I was charged by Speaker Pelosi to work with a couple of my colleagues from California to develop the innovation agenda for our party a couple of years ago, to talk about where the Democrats might take this country if we regained the Congress of the United States and hopefully the presidency of the United States. We talked about the innovation agenda. And we went out to Stanford University, And we sat and listened to the sort of the rock stars, if you will, the most successful people in the biotech industry, the high-tech industry, the venture capital community. And for several hours, in a stunning performance, 5 members of Congress sat quietly without saying anything, telling them all that we knew about the subject. We listened to these individuals. And they started describing the persons that they were looking for to participate in their companies and to lead their companies and become part of their workforce. And the kind of person that now so many business journals tell us these companies are trolling, as they say, they're trolling, the fishing term, trolling the world over for this talent. They're not confined to the United States, they're not confined to China, they're not confined anywhere, they're trolling the world for this talent. And they said that they were talking about a worker who could work across their company, across the country, and across the continents, working together with the most diverse workforce in the history of the world to assemble solutions to complex problems for the most diverse client base in the history of the world. That's the kind of person that they were looking for. And you start to think about that definition and start to think about a system that's designed to produce that kind of worker. And it probably isn't No Child Left Behind. It probably isn't a system that believes that you can make a single assessment on a single day, on a single test about that teacher, the child, the parents, the school, the community, and decide whether they're all passing or failing. That's probably not going to work. And there's a lot of evidence that it isn't. But at the same time, let us remember the underlying principle. This is probably the strongest law in the books outside of the Constitution. This says that we have an obligation and a responsibility as a nation to educate poor and minority children. And if you're going to educate poor and minority children, you're going to take that responsibility to heart. That also means that you're going to have standards and assessments and curriculum and accountability. Otherwise, we go back to a system where these children became invisible, and that's unacceptable. But can we work within that confines with many improvements yet to come, so that we can in fact do that? And can we use that to develop the 21st century worker? I think we can, but clearly one of the most important things that we can do is to quickly make an assessment of what are our assets, what are the resources we have available. We have a school system that for most parts continues to look like the industrial age, that continues to operate on an agrarian clock. And many politicians talk about that as a throwaway line to show that they're contemporary and everybody else is behind. But the fact suggests that that's still the case, and that it's not set up for young people today who are coming to that system. And when we look at why it's remained this way so long, is because sometimes this nation is surprised. And when we set out in a globalized world in 1980, we thought the goal was, when we went to China, that we would have this great market where they would buy all of these great products that Procter & Gamble had and John Deere tractor had and everybody had. They'd be shampooing their hair with all this same stuff we're shampooing our hair with here. Little did we realize that it wasn't just a marketplace. It was a nation that was going to dedicate itself to replicating what we had done. They would develop university systems. They had university systems. They developed centers of excellence. They would develop specialty colleges, specialty curriculums. And they would attract people from all over the world, and they would send their people all over the world to compete with us. And all of a sudden, it wasn't just about selling to China. It was about competing with China. And the same is true of India. 1 billion people. If I could just sell 1 billion set of suspenders, I'd be rich. Well, they decided to make their own suspenders. And then they decided to make pants, you don't need suspenders. And pretty soon, suspended people were out of business. But the point is this. This iteration of globalization is about competition. And it's about the assets that are necessary. It's about developing that 21st century worker. And so we have got to understand that while we have this obligation under No Child Left Behind, and we must keep it if we're going to hold on to our democracy, we must keep that obligation and that responsibility. We must look forward and how we develop the tools to do that. And clearly we must rethink, and what you've been thinking about and what we've been in communications with is about the capacity of the teacher corps in this nation to deliver that 21st century education. It's the most fundamental part of solving this problem.